Hey, y'all. I have an episode that you need to hear. It's with Eben Britton, who is a stud, badass ex-NFL player, star turned yogi, who is a podcaster and an author and goes way deep with me. So check this out. You're not going to want to miss it. Look at me now. Are you ready for a wild ride? I'm Alexis Artin, and I invite you to strap in because this is more than a podcast. This is Look at Me Now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Look at Me Now. I mean, I feel like every time I sit down at this microphone with somebody, I get so fucking excited because somebody is sitting in the seat across from me that I feel really jazzed to not only talk to, but introduce you to. And today is no exception. I have Eben Britton sitting here with me today. He is a former NFL player turned yogi, as if you aren't intrigued enough, right? But he's also an author and he's got a podcast and he really is just a magnificent human being. So let's get into talking to Eben. Hey, buddy, thanks for being here.
Alexis, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I am just so excited to dig into the juiciness of your story because while the majority of the guests that I've had on this season so far have been people that I've had long-term relationships with. And I'm actually just meeting you. But I feel like I know you because I've been digging in to your podcast and, a lot of information that's out there. And your story is really inspiring. So the way that this podcast works is we look at the past, then we look at the present, and then we face forward on the timeline and look at the future. And I want to start, as we always do, looking back on the timeline because you really do have a remarkable story, but also the way that you speak about it, the way that you reflect on it, I find to be really inspiring. So let's look back at your beginnings. Can you encapsulate for us what it was like growing up in the household that you grew up in?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate all of that too. Thank you.
Of course,
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for the feedback. Sometimes doing all of this, you're not sure what hits, what lands, what makes sense to people, if anything makes sense to people.
Yeah.
Because I feel like much of this for me has just been sharing my experience in the hope that someone else is going through something similar or has been through something similar and was looking for context or felt really lost because they felt like they were going crazy or they were doing it wrong or it wasn't right or their life was a mess. All of these ideas that we have, they come in all the time in different phases of our lives, I know I'm definitely going through, it's funny to think about my past in that lately I'm in a really deeply introspective moment of my life looking at how old beliefs that I'm still holding on to are affecting my day-to-day life now, and looking at what's serving me, what's not serving me, what do I want to change, how do I change it, and where do all these things come from? And so for me, I was born in New York City. Just kind of the bullet points. I was born in New York City, lived in Brooklyn until I was 10. My parents got divorced when I was 7. When I was at 10 years old, my mom moved my brother and I to Los Angeles, which was sort of a defining moment of my childhood. And there was a lot of heaviness. Come from a family that's very affected by the disease of alcoholism and all the mental health ailments that come with that construct, that complex, that neuro what do we call it? It's
neurodiverse.
No, it's like it's really a brain chemistry disease, alcoholism.
Yes, absolutely.
You know? And so there's all sorts of things that come out of that way of being that you don't really think about, especially someone who doesn't really, like, you hear alcoholism and you think fall down drunks, you think blackouts, you think like a lot of really scary stuff. And while some of those things were true at moments, it's the much more subtle aspect of that and how it affects everyday mundane communication, like how we communicate with one another in the family.
Yeah.
You know, and in my family, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of doubt, there's a lot of second guessing, there's a lot of very common communication pathways that I think anybody, almost everybody, would resonate with if we talked about them, you know. And so for me, the thing that occurred to me of how I could get myself out of that was football. Football became this vehicle for me to transcend all of that. And
why football?
You know, football was this, it's our modern day gladiator sport, you know. Sure. It's a highly violent sport, and something called to me when I was about 8 years old. I was at my grandparents' house in Connecticut watching the morning news, and they had clips of the Jets and the Giants in training camp, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with this idea of being one of those guys on the field, one of those gladiators. And
what did you think it would bring you?
I thought it would bring me, you know, the whole thing was about proving myself to the world.
There we go. Sure.
Proving my worth, you know, proving that I'm good enough, proving that I'm strong enough, proving that I'm man enough, proving that I'm scary enough, somebody to be feared. It was my way to conquer the world. You know?
Sure. And especially it's a way to get some certainty in a very uncertain world, or at least that's probably something that you imagine it would bring you. Maybe not even on a conscious level, but.
Right. Yes, absolutely. It was something that I could really dedicate myself to and hold this vision of achieving this dream of playing in the NFL. And I could just put everything else away. You know, I didn't have to think about how to communicate or what's going on inside of me. All of this rage, I could take this rage out onto the field and be celebrated for it.
Absolutely.
You know,
yes.
So I did that. And from my freshman year of high school through 6 years in the NFL, I gave football every ounce that I had. Mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. It was everything I was playing football, being this warrior on the field. And I destroyed myself in the process of trying to prove all of that stuff.
How? How so?
Pushing through a lot of pain, injury, which resulted in it manifested in physical injuries, dislocating my shoulder twice in one game. It had been subluxating since the time I was a sophomore in high school. For anybody listening who doesn't know, subluxation is the shoulder slides in and out of the joint, the socket. It's full dislocation as it comes out of the socket, stays out of the socket. So from the time I was about 14 years old, my shoulder would slide in and out of the socket a couple times a season. And I'd do all the stuff, the shoulder exercises, the band workouts, everything I could do. I knew I was a master of managing pain. And finally, my second year in the NFL, it fully dislocated twice. I popped it back in, kept playing, popped out again, and then they wouldn't let me go back in. I had to have season-ending surgery, had a ruptured disc in my spine, had to have a discectomy, an L5S1.
You know,
had
it's so,
severe sciatic nerve pain.
Oh man, it's so interesting because I often talk a lot about from like the embodiment side of things, that we bully our bodies so much. We don't befriend our bodies.
Oh, yeah.
And it really comes from this place of, that mind over matter concept, right? But that mind over matter concept is just, in essence, another way of bullying our bodies and making them our bitch, if you will. And not understanding that, our bodies are, from the way that I see it, carefully selected so that we can have an embodied experience of like our energy, our soul's purpose, like through this body. Like our soul is the why and the body is the how.
Yes.
Right? And rather than partner with the body and revere the body, we bully the body because we're like, demand. Yeah. Be thinner, be stronger, be this, be that. Right. I need you to like rise to the occasion to get me more of what I think I don't have. And it's not a rare story that will do it to the point of injury. We'll do it to the point of self-harm and we'll say, get up and keep going, pop that shoulder blade back in and get back on that field.
Yeah.
And
I love this, by the way. I wasn't expecting this, but this is like great direction for this.
Yeah. I mean, it because it is something that a lot of people, they take it for granted, but they don't even know they're taking it for granted.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like all of the things that our body is constantly doing for us.
Oh my God.
Without a second thought, without, and oftentimes with you're not good enough, I need more from you, rather than a gratitude and a partnership and a reverence, right? That your body is your best friend and your number one source of feedback. And are you really even listening to it? So
I feel that big.
I find it so interesting that, there's yet another person taking another form. I have a friend who's a Navy SEAL, and he was like, a specimen, like probably one of the fittest people on the planet at a certain point in time. But what he did to his body was anybody on the outside would go, wow, that guy is a gladiator.
Right.
And on the inside, he was partially going deaf, partially going blind, like his body was riddled with injury and illness, telling him, please stop. Please stop.
Yeah.
And he became a healer and you became a yogi. And I just don't, I don't think there's a coincidence in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what comes up for you as I say all of that?
So true. Big part of my journey has been learning how to love myself, learning how to love my body, take good care of my body. I remember this was years ago now, but I remember coming out of the NFL, coming out of football, and there's a lot of processing, and I started to recognize how pain is this signal from your body that, hey, something's going on, listen. And in football, we're constantly overriding the signals, getting back out on the field. Everything hurts. Tape it up, take some pills, do what you got to do, get out on the field. Basically, we're all willing to die on the field playing this game.
Yeah.
And also this idea that I've talked about before. I mean, we treat our bodies like shit. Even somebody who's not a pro athlete, someone who's just sort of living unconsciously and eating like tons of processed junk food and drinking tons of alcohol and taking all sorts of substances and medications. And we treat our body like shit. And like you said, it gets up every day and it makes it happen. What a miracle. Isn't that crazy? How miraculous
it's a lot like a
it
child.
is.
I mean, I refer to a lot to the body as like, there was a place that I used to work and we used to call it the baby body because it's this child that's just constantly going, how can I please you? What else can I do for you? And just, and doing it without, needing to ask permission or needing to ask for forgiveness. Just how can I show up for you?
Yeah.
And is that enough for you? And what else can I do for you? And tirelessly. Yeah. And are you proud of me? Did I do it? And you're like, no, you're still fat.
Yeah.
No, you're still, no, you still hurt. No, you're getting older. No, you're,
It's deep stuff.
It's deep stuff.
And it's really, I mean, I laugh because it's true for me. And it's still, I wake up every day. Every time I do yoga, I'm looking at myself in the mirror. There's a part of me that just wants to be like, dude, you're not in good enough shape.
Yeah.
And I have to actively, very intentionally go, you're perfect. Thank you, body. Thank you, body, for being so
Which,
strong.
by the way, I have to pause here for a second, because if you're listening to this, like on Spotify or Apple, and you're not on YouTube, actually physically looking at Eben right now, he is, in a million years, you would go, what the fuck are you talking about? You are
I hear that all the time,
ripped.
And I'm like,
you're
really?
But isn't that sort of the point, right? It's like the supermodels that, look in the mirror and go, I'm not enough. I need to lose more weight. Right. Oh my God, this cellulite. Oh, I need injections to keep up or stay young or whatever. Nobody is immune, right? It's sort of the human condition.
Yeah.
But isn't it just fascinating?
Where have you found, does it just come from this conditioning that's told to us from the time we're little kids that you got to be better, you got to do more, you're too fat, don't eat that. With kids, there's a lot of stuff. Like when I was a kid, there was a lot of stuff around food.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you a story that is true for me. I remember, I love you, Mom. This is a mom story. Mom, I love you. I know you did this because you loved me. But I was prepubescent. I was probably 11, 12 years old.
So super important time.
Super important time.
Like you're just a sponge.
Super important time. And our doctor was a man who was a family friend. So it was like I would go take off my shirt and have my physical exams with him, and then he'd be at the holiday party,
Interesting.
So it was an interesting dynamic, right? Anyway, I was about to go away for summer camp, and I was having my physical exam so that I could get the approval to go to summer camp as like a healthy young girl. And at the end of my exam, I just remember this sense of relief, like putting my shirt back on and going like, I'm going to get out of here, And as I was just like finishing getting dressed, my mom lifted the hem of my shirt and pulled it up, and she grabbed a fistful of flesh on my stomach and demanded to know from the doctor, what is this? Why does she have this? Ugh. And here's what I know. I know in that moment, what I absorbed was something's wrong with me. And it has to do with the extra amount of flesh or fat or whatever that I have in my midsection. What I also know to be true, now that I'm a 45-year-old woman who has done more coaching and therapy and all of the things than you can imagine, is that my mom did that because she was terrified that I was going to go to camp that summer and not look like everybody else, because I was a year or two younger than my bunkmates and my classmates. And she didn't want me to get bullied again. And it came from such a place of love and such a place of worry on her part. She thought she was doing a service. But what I took from that was I have every reason to feel shame and not good enough because of the amount of, or the extra size of the shape that I'm taking in my body. And I can tell you that I ended up having way too much plastic surgery, way too young, because I thought that I had to carve myself on the outside to be someone that might potentially be lovable on the inside. right? So it comes from a really deep awareness of, yes, it is force-fed to us. And it is on billboards, and it is in advertisements, and it is on TV, and it is in movies, and it is in the dialect of the culture. It is woven into the patriarchy. We don't need to get into all of that. But, you know, it really is something that is, you know, whether we're conscious of it or not, woven into the fabric of our lives. And it is, you know, survival of the fittest, right? I'm going to partner with the most genetically pleasing. You know, for women, it's I'm going to find the strongest man.
Right.
And for men, it's I'm going to find the most beautiful woman.
Right. Wow.
So that's,
thank you for sharing
you
that.
know, in a nutshell, sort of the basis of where it all comes from. And there's 10 more podcasts that we could talk about that and outline it and flush it out.
That's a book right there.
But it really does. It leads to, you could be sitting across from an NFL player, yogi person who anybody else would from the outside look at and go, what does he have to complain about? How could he look in the mirror and have a negative thought in his head?
So
and yet
funny.
It is the human condition. It is to compare and despair and outwardly measure our value rather than go inward and go, nope, not measurable by any standards.
I love that. I love that flip, that switch, that shift. I mean, that's been so big for me.
Absolutely. And where does it come from? It comes from the little boy who grew up in I'm going to stick a label on it, even though I don't love labels, like a dysfunctional family.
Yes.
Right? Who was going,
precisely.
How do I stay safe? How do I get love? How do I make myself feel like I'm enough and I'm worthy to continue to stay safe and to let alone get ahead? And ensure that I'm going to stay safe and lovable for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Right? And so as you look back at that, you know, young boy that you were, who had to create a strategy to get to that place and saw football as the avenue for it, you know, what do you recognize in that kid that got you to where you are today?
I love that. I love that. I really do. I love where this is going. I haven't, you know, I get asked to talk about the football life and my backstory, and I'm like, it's the same story a lot of times.
Yeah.
So to dive into these little pockets is really nice and feels really good and fun and interesting. And my relationship with my 7-year-old self has become so it's been such an incredibly powerful experience to reparent that little boy, you know, and reconcile my inside as a man of who I am to the point that I can be with little Eb and tell him, hey man, we're going to be okay. You know, you're safe now because I'm here. I got us. And recognizing, you know, like you, done tons of therapy and group work and 12-step and plant medicine, all the stuff, you know, that you do when you're on the journey of self-study, you know. And coming to not only recognize and honor that what that little boy did, he had to do to get us to where we are now. Yeah. That no one in our family was able to do. Shit that, you know, overcame stuff that no one spoke out against, bullying and abuse that no one in our family was able to do. And felt a lot of shame for it because there wasn't any dynamic for, you know, a 12-year-old speaking his mind to, you know, a grown man about what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. And so it creates all sorts of confusion emotionally when you're that age and you don't understand, like, oh, I just upset the whole household. But actually I did, looking back, it's like, oh, little Eb did the thing that nobody else could do. Said the truth, said the reality that nobody else was willing to speak. And, so really honoring that and honoring everything that I've done has been a big thing. I recognized in the last 7 or 8 months that while I've come to acknowledge everything that I've done and been through, like the pain, the wounds, the chaos that I've created, making the amends, finding forgiveness for others, doing all of that work, there was still a part of me that wanted all of that to just be dead and gone. And not allow it in the grand scheme of who I am. So honoring all of it has been a really healing part of my experience of going, yeah, I did a great job and I did the best I could with what I had, and I made some mistakes too, and all of it is part of the wonderful, is one brick laid on the path of me getting to this place that I'm at now, which is having an opportunity to, having the tools and the opportunity and the capacity to be with myself enough to listen to what I truly need.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rather than, it's still a process. It's still like an unfolding that's constantly happening. I spent, however many years as an athlete, and that whole life is just built on itineraries and where to be and when to be and how hard you got to go, and you got to beat everybody out. And I was always a team captain and a team leader, and the guy that's like, sprinting up the stadium stairs, throwing up the whole way up and beating everybody up and then walking back down and doing it again, and my stuff with my body's not fit enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not muscular enough. I'm not XYZ enough, all that stuff. And then how that feeds into my daily behaviors, these patterns that I have of, I got to go work out. I got to go kill myself in the gym. I got to go get an insanely hard, hot yoga class in, and then maybe I'll lift in the afternoon, and I gotta, all this just mental chaos that comes with all of that. And through it all, really meditation, therapy, and a constant commitment to finding peace and quiet inside, which I think has been my main goal over the last decade. It's like, I just want peace. I want quiet. Like, I've spent enough lifetimes as the Viking warlord taking souls and hurting people, hurting myself. I need quiet. I need peace. I want love. I want clarity. I want compassion. And I know that the missing link for me has been that has to start inside with my relationship with myself.
Couldn't be truer.
So now I'm in this place where, rather than waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and hustling to the gym to get a weight workout in, I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I do my breathing, I do my meditation, and then I just go for a long walk. And the walking there's been a lot of change. I just moved to Texas, so I'm going back and forth from Texas. My daughter lives here with her mom, and living on this 5-acre ranch in Texas out in the country. It's so quiet, it's so still and peaceful. And it's like this outer peace has helped magnify or helped me integrate this inner peace that I've been developing and cultivating for the last 7-8 years. And it's just starting to settle in. Like, I'm starting to anchor into it in my bones and my cells, Like I can feel the repatterning happening because there's the shadows or the whispers of the old paradigm, the old patterning wanting to like, yeah. And then it's
fight for its existence.
Yeah. And
Sure.
I've developed enough of the watcher. I don't know if I really always, but the witness of it so that I can sit where my feet are and not be flying out a million miles away with my mind.
Sure.
Or my programming.
Sure.
Really is what it is.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered your question but
You definitely did. And
it really, just kind of to bring it full circle, reparenting myself, which is a term that is used in 12-step programs. Like that's been a really powerful experience for me of coming into contact with that little boy who was so fucking scared, and so hurt.
Yeah.
And doing anything he could to survive.
Yeah.
And taking him by the hand and going, dude, I got us.
Yeah.
I got us, man. Like, I'm going to take care of us and we're going to live. It's going to be safe and we're going to live the life that we deserve to live.
It's interesting because I'm a huge fan of reparenting work. And you mentioned a few things that sparked my interest in terms of there are parts that are very easy to love when we reparent. And then there are parts that are more challenging to love when we reparent. It's very easy to look at an innocent little 5-year-old Eb, who's in a situation that's, just awful to see him in. And it's just so easy to scoop him up and hold him in your arms and have every reason to love on him and tell him it's not his fault and you've got him. It's quite another to see an Eb that is making a decision that you don't necessarily agree with or that you might shame or judge, right? So for me, as an example, it's really easy for me to like look at my little 5-year-old's little Lexi and go like, oh my God, like you could do no wrong. Of course it's easy to love you and to reparent you. But then I look at the really awkward, 13-year-old me who makes me cringe. And it's not easy to love her.
Yeah.
If I'm being really honest,
No,
right?
I get it. I'm laughing because
you can recognize
I see
it.
12-year-old Eb who's chubby and sad and all
And
of
that's
those
who's
things.
talking to you in the mirror when you're like, doing your yoga practice and going, it's not quite good enough yet, Eb. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's a journey. And I always say, we are like water that, when we're born, we're like poured into a container, right? And that container is our environment. It is the people that we're dependent on. It is the community that we're surrounded by and the expectations that all of that, container has for us. And so what does water do? It takes the shape of the container physically, emotionally, mentally.
Yeah.
We do that. And oftentimes it's not a fit for our soul. Right. And so what I hear you saying is I have to manage the expectation of who Eb has needed to be. And all of the noise and all of the input. I've had to filter through all of that to get to, well, wait a second, can I hear my own truth?
Yes.
Can I advocate for what that is telling me above all else when everything else, every time that I tried to do that, I wasn't safe?
Yes.
But can I do it now? And can I trust that no matter what the outcome of that is, that all is well?
Yes.
And that's not an easy journey for any of us to go through.
Yeah.
Right.
It's been huge for me.
Absolutely.
Lately. I mean, like this move to Texas was an example of that for me, of making a decision based on totally what's just right for me.
Yeah.
Like what my heart and soul were desperately crying out for. And making a decision based on that rather than what does mom want me to do? What does dad think's right? What does the society tell me I need to do or how to be. And that individuation for me has been, it took so long to get to a place. I think maybe when I'm 36, maybe when I was 30, I started to even consider the idea that what am I making decisions based on? Mm-hmm. What are my choices linked to?
Right.
Is it linked to what I truly desire? Like what my soul is truly calling for? Or is it because they want me to do it? Or this is what I think I'm supposed to do because it's the right thing to do? Or X, Y, or Z, all of those reasons that we have,
Yeah.
And I said this thing earlier today because it was a necessary reminder for me of when I came out of football, I was crushed. I was in shambles, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, dismantled. And first, it took me a while to recognize I was in pain and that I had been suffering,
Mm-hmm. And can I just clarify, is that because there was an identity crisis? It's like you're losing your identity, you're losing your power and influence, you're losing a financial source of income, you're losing all of these things.
All of that.
Got it.
And my body.
And your body's breaking down.
Shoulder, back, knees, neck.
Yes. Yes.
So everything you just said in a nutshell.
Which I just have to say this because it just came to me. Is, I today was having this thought in my mind about, let's not even get into why, a nervous breakdown and how, a nervous breakdown is somebody who just needs a break, like breakdown of your nervous system, your nervous system going, I need a break. And if you're not going to give me one, I'll create one for us. So it sounds almost like this existential crisis / nervous breakdown kind of situation that it was literally just, hold on, we need to pause and we need to reposition here.
Yeah, 1,000%. It's like,
okay, sorry. I just, was
I love that.
I needed to just
breakdown.
take a snapshot of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please. Thank you. Got that.
Screenshot.
No, I love that. I think that's totally right on point. And yes, that's what I experienced. And so it took me a while to recognize, hey, I need help. Probably took me 2 years before all the escape valves weren't working anymore.
Sure.
2 hours in the gym, the alcohol, the weed, the porn, like whatever I could get just to get like a little hit of bliss, a little hit of joy just wasn't working anymore.
Sure.
The escape valves were no longer serving their purpose. And so I had to ask for help. I completely broke down. Like my whole life was just falling apart. I couldn't communicate with anybody. I couldn't even voice like what was happening inside because I didn't have a vocabulary. So it took me like 2 years just to ask for help and recognize that I needed help and I needed to do something new, right? And then I started to find these remedies. I started to go to Al-Anon, 12-step program for families of alcoholics. Because I didn't have a drinking disease, I had a thinking disease,
Love that.
Yeah, that's a big one in the program. And that hit the nail on the head for me. Because it wasn't like, while I would go home and drink a case of beer, it wasn't ever the beer. It was my unmanageable thoughts, my unmanageable thinking. Was really the issue, the crux of the issue.
I mean, it always is, but I've never heard it phrased that way. And I think that's so catchy and on point, right?
Yeah. No, and it really, for anybody who doesn't know what it is, you're like, oh, okay, I get that, So it took me a while to tap into these things and go back to therapy. And then that led me into meditation and back to yoga, which thank God my mom had started taking me to when I was 10 years old. So I had this... in program, recovery is a big part of my family too, because my mom's been sober now 40 years.
God bless.
Yeah. God bless. Thank God. And so she was she was breaking the chain on a lot of stuff.
Sure.
For my brother and I to have this opportunity to have the playing field that we've been in, or at least have the landscape.
Pattern interrupt started with her.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so then it was this whole time of immersing myself in these practices, these new ways, these new behaviors, these new patterns of being, new ways of thinking, new perspectives. And then it took a while for that to start to integrate, me to start being this new person, you know? And so then it comes to this place where you've done all this stuff, you've done all this work, you've lifted yourself up out of many holes, out of, your own, if you want to talk about it energetically, you're raising your vibration, you're raising your frequency, you're cleaning out all the stuff that's no longer serving you. And so then it's like, okay, now what? Where are we now? Well, I want to just have the perfect life already. That's kind of like where I'm at now, because I'm like, I've figured out what I want to do, and the purposeful work that I've been building for now almost 10 years, and I just want it to be successful right now. And it's like, well, it's taken a lot of time to get here, dude.
Yeah.
So I had to recognize this morning, remind myself of the process, and I've done this so many times. It's funny because it's like, and like I said earlier, this idea of looking back at my life, I've been in such a deep introspective mode of, especially around money and finances and my worth and my value, looking at the dysfunctional paradigms that I came up in, that were programmed into me, and rewriting all of that coding so that I can do what I want to do, which is essentially have financial security and financial stability in my life. It's like a big priority for me. And like building that, there's been a lot of, okay, well, we got to, from God's perspective, Eb, you're praying for financial stability and financial security. Well, we got to just kind of obliterate everything that and everything as it is, because that's not serving us in getting to this next place.
Well, I mean, and isn't it ironic, to quote Alanis Morissette, isn't it ironic that, you've had the pinnacle of success.
Yes.
I mean, how many people can go, I want to be a star NFL player, and actually see that come to fruition, right? So it's like, success, like financial success, celebrity success, all of the things that you're talking about. And yet it didn't fulfill you.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, you have had that level of success, and look what it cost you, and you purposefully walked away from it. But now you're like, well, now I want to recreate it again. And it's like, okay, well, isn't it ironic that you want the same thing that you already had, that you said, this actually isn't healthy for me, this outward measure of success, versus the reason you're doing this is because it's an inward measure of success. Yes. But you still want that outward measurement that you're comparing it to.
Yes. You're totally right on.
Kind of double-edged sword, right?
You're totally right on. And that's where I have to go. Look at how far we've come, man. And we're doing everything we want to do.
And isn't that a measure of success in and of itself?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like you did it, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, I know from working in the entertainment industry, I, saddled up with all these, A-listers. This was my former life before all of this. And how many of them were train wrecks. I say that with all the love in the world. I'm not trying to like lump it into a judgment, but suffering greatly.
Yeah.
So it's a moment to pause, and it's a moment to reflect on okay, hold on. What actually am I chasing here?
Yeah. Oh, I love that we're here because you're the fourth conversation in 3 days that's reframed everything for me in a really positive way that I've needed.
And that's what you've been searching for, so you're calling it in.
Yeah.
And I also believe that the second that we let go of, okay, universe, I'm going to arm wrestle you and I'm going to win. I want to control this thing, right?
Yeah.
As soon as we go, okay, like I don't have a dog in this fight. You know, I'm letting go and I'm letting God, so to speak. All of a sudden, that's when the financial windfall comes, right?
Of course. And how many times have I done this to myself before, you know, where I'm like in here, what's the problem? What do I need to do? What am I not doing? What do I don't understand? What do I not understand? You know, it's like I can't see the forest through the trees type of thing.
Right.
You know?
And you can't because you are not the universe at large.
Yeah.
You're a man. One man.
Thank you, Alexis.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I'm so like grateful for the honesty. So what we do at the end of the podcast is, you know, we've looked at the past and we've looked at the present, and oftentimes they're so interwoven that we're not necessarily trying to like dictate space and time here. But as you face forward to the future, having spent this beautiful time reflecting on the past and sitting in the present, what do you see as you cast your gaze on the horizon of what comes next? And then I have one more question for you. That's always my piece de résistance.
Okay. I see the miracles that arise out of continuing to follow God, Spirit, my heart, because that's only brought me miraculous changes in my life to do that. I see myself with deeper allowance, acceptance, and love for myself and all that surrounds me, and doing what I love to do in my purpose, which I would say is what I'm here doing now, sharing my experience, strength, and hope with people.
I mean, cut, print, put that on your vision board. I love it. I love it.
Snapshot.
I love it.
I have to cut the clip after the pod comes live.
That's it. All right. So final question. I ask this of all of my guests. If I had a mirror here, and one day I'm going to bring in a mirror, I'm going to do it. If I had a mirror here and I were to hold it up to you, and you were to take that gaze of, you know, look at me now. It's a play on words. So many people think of that as, you know, really externally focused. Like, look at me now, you know, I was in this, you know, horrible, dysfunctional family, and then I became this massive NFL star. Look at me now, everybody, you know.
I did say that, I think.
I'm sure you did. I would have if I were you. But taking that gaze and turning it inward and saying, look at me now. Look at what I've created. Look at what I've overcome. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. There is no external measure that holds any value. It is really how I see myself. So as you look in that mirror and you say, look at me now. This is what I want you to hear from me. This is what I really want you to take away in this present moment. What do you say to that man in the mirror?
Look at how far you've come and what a beautiful job you've done developing yourself and becoming a compassionate, loving, honest, strong man that people can rely on. which feels really good.
Yeah. I mean, I can feel that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I can't thank you enough for being here today and
Thank you.
being so willing and so open to share your remarkable story with everybody. I'm sure that everybody's going to walk away with more than one pearl of wisdom. And I'm so grateful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alexis.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We're wrapping another episode of Look at Me Now up, and we'll see you next time. Join us for Look at Me Now wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to share, like, and subscribe.